How old is the Earth? Is the Earth billions of years old, like the textbooks say? Or is it only 6,000 years old, like the Bible says?
I'm pretty sure it's old as fuck. Recently, I started a 3-part series called Why I Don't Creation. That series is aimed at explaining what evidence supports evolution. In the first episode, we talked about the age of the Earth, and why I think it's more than 6,000 years old. After stumbling across the video we're looking at today, I've decided to do a response 2-parter. This is a fitting follow-up as it deals mostly with some misleading facts about the age of the Earth. Welcome to Evidence versus Truth in Genesis, Part 1.
Now, if I told you that if you kissed a frog, it would magically turn into a prince, you would say, that's a fairy tale. But did you know that is exactly what evolution teaches?
Ahem. No, it isn't.
They teach that we started off as an amoeba, and this slowly, over millions of years, turned into a frog. Then slowly, over millions and millions of years, the frog turned into the prince. You see, if a frog turns into a handsome prince quickly, it's a fairy tale. But if a frog turns into a handsome prince slowly, well, that's modern science. No, it is not. It is still a fairy tale.
This highly reductive view of evolution is very misleading. Amphibians and mammals are different classifications of modern animals. Humans no more came from frogs than your grandfather was a gorilla, though we may share common ancestry with them and every other organism on the planet. First of all, the time frame you offer in your example is much too short. You say millions of years, and yet evidence supports the use of hundreds of millions to billions of years to describe fully the process of evolution. Radiometric dating has placed our Earth and much of the solar system at an age of around 4.54 billion years. Given enough time, even small occasional changes in the lineage of an organism can yield widely different outcomes. Organisms with traits promoting survivability will have more of an opportunity to reproduce and pass on their genes. This is what is often referred to as natural selection, but other factors can also lead to change, such as mutation, which is random errors that occur in DNA replication. Observed adaptations, such as a certain three-toed skink of Australia developing live birth in some of its populations, could eventually lead to a speciation between that population and other egg-laying variants on the island, and, given enough time, say billions of years, they may be unrecognizable as ever having been related. Also, the amoeba wasn't the first type of organism on the planet. And magic? Really?
The textbooks in our schools are filled with the idea of millions and billions of years. The next time you hear someone say millions and millions of years ago, stop them and ask, were you there?
Were you? And no, the Bible doesn't qualify as an eyewitness account. But seriously, this question serves no purpose except to invalidate the source of any information on the grounds that it wasn't observed firsthand. Basically, anything that can't be viewed directly is now invalid, because apparently, reasons?
Science is knowledge derived from observation and study. Can you observe, study, or demonstrate something that happened billions of years ago? Absolutely not.
I will admit that observation is important as a tool of investigation. However, it isn't the only one, and not having directly observed an event or process doesn't preclude us from gaining a measure of understanding about said event or process. Through the use of evidence and scientific inquiry, we can make and test various hypotheses in an effort to unravel life's many mysteries. It is not that dissimilar from solving a crime after the crime has been committed. We don't need eyewitness accounts or iPhone video of the crime to follow a trail of evidence to the most likely suspect. Granted, those things would be nice, if they were reliable, but they aren't necessary. Evidence such as the multi-million-year layering of sedimentary rocks and radiometric dating of fairly isolated samples of Earth minerals, lunar samples, and even meteorite fragments definitely suggest the Earth being far older than 6,000 years. About 750,000 times older.
It is true that over half the scientists believe in evolution. That is true, but that does not make evolution true. They have a long history of being wrong. They used to teach that the sun revolves around the Earth. They were wrong.
So a better position would be to never admit being incorrect, or to claim divine infallibility? What you seem to think of as the weakness of science is, in my opinion, one of its greatest strengths: the ability to change and grow in the light of new evidence and research, not accepting things to be true out of a sense of tradition, but instead ever seeking to further the horizon of human knowledge. As with any journey, there may often be missteps or roads taken that lead to nowhere, but the exploration of nature is crucial, and the bad ideas are like signposts in the path of progress. Also, the Bible had no explanation of the heliocentric nature of our solar system. Just saying.
They used to teach that a big rock will fall faster than a little rock. They were wrong.
Galileo did find that objects do fall at the same rate, which was quite contrary to Aristotle's earlier assumptions. This would later be modified by Newton and further expanded on by Einstein. This only goes to show that science is generally an additive process by which each contribution helps in the furthering of knowledge, even when the contribution turns out to be incorrect or incomplete. What's your point?
They used to teach that if you were sick you had bad blood. This was known as the doctrine of humors. It was believed that if you bled out the bad blood you would get better. There used to be places all over the United States where you could go and get your blood taken out. And right beside George Washington, when they were bleeding him to death, was a Bible that told them, "For the life of the flesh is in the blood."
The balancing of humors, or humorism, was a process dating back to the time of the ancient Romans and Greeks. It was a widespread tradition throughout much of the Western world. You know, the Christian world, until quite recently. In fact, humorism had maintained its prominence as a medical tradition in many deeply devout countries up until the 19th century, when advances in the scientific fields of pathology and chemistry led to a better understanding of the causal factors of disease. So science actually was a huge part of the reason why medicine moved away from the archaic practice of humorism and bloodletting. Fun fact though, many of the scientists throughout history have been religious, even Christian. So seeing science as this foreign agency of anti-religious sentiment is ridiculous. Also, you mentioned the passage of Leviticus that says the life of the flesh is in the blood, as if that demonstrates some secret knowledge of the human body. I'm fairly certain by the time that passage had been written that the correlation between blood and life had been established, as the occurrence of a man bleeding out on the battlefield causing his death would probably not have shocked very many. I would be more impressed if there was an accurate diagram of the human heart and precise instructions on how to perform a heart bypass. But, like you, I've gone off topic. How does any of this add up to a 6,000-year-old Earth?
There are numerous scientific ways to show the universe is not billions of years old. When a star blows up, it creates a nova or a supernova. Astronomers have observed that about every 30 years a star dies and explodes into a supernova. There are only about 300 supernovas. Let's see, 300 times 30 equals about 9,000 years. Well, if the universe is billions of years old, how come there are less than 300 supernovas? There should be several hundred million of them. This is evidence that shows that the universe is only thousands of years old, not billions.
Supernova is actually the name given to the explosion or collapse of what is usually a massive star. What I think you are referring to is supernova remnants, the observable leftovers of a supernova, which can vary based on what type of life cycle a star had and how they went supernova. The Crab Nebula is a good example, as it is a remnant of a supernova first observed in 1054 AD. These remnants, if observable, can last for tens of thousands of years to well over 100,000 years. As for your figure of 3 a century, I don't believe that it's actually accurate. I've heard it was actually between 1 and 2 a century in relation to our own Milky Way galaxy. But giving you that concession and assuming every century yielded 3 supernova, then 300 would account for about 9 to 10,000 years worth of supernova occurrences, which is still much older than the biblical estimations of the Earth. However, even in our own Milky Way galaxy, new remnants are often discovered that obscured or hidden due to the high density of dust and interference. But the oldest remnants in our own galaxy that we could hope to detect would probably be around the 200,000 year mark, due to the dissipation of supernova remnants and the fact that light takes around 100,000 years to cross from the opposite side of the Milky Way. Also, even massive stars of the type that go supernova with their relatively short stellar lives still require millions of years to reach a point before a supernova can happen, which is a bit different from the 6,000 years you are claiming.
Textbooks say red giant stars evolve into white dwarfs stars over billions of years. They teach that it takes billions of years for a star to evolve from a red giant to a white dwarf. Well, we know this is not true. Egyptian hieroglyphs from 2000 BC describe Sirius as red. It was observed to be red as recently as 150 AD. Today, it is a white star binary. So no, it does not take billions of years for this to happen. It only takes thousands.
Sirius, which is actually 2 stars but appears to be a single star from our point of view, is comprised of a white main sequence star and a white dwarf, and it is one of the oldest noted stars to be cataloged by humankind. However, the white dwarf companion star wasn't noticed until the 1800s, and Sirius A, which is the one that is mostly responsible for the star system's high visibility, is not what is produced from a red giant, as it is still a main sequence star, but it may in fact become a red giant eventually. The redness of the Sirius star system has been a much debated and queried thing, as it was described in various early records as being red. However, alternate early accounts labeled it as other colors, such as being bluish in the 1st century, and it has been suggested that scintillations of the star system have contributed to this. That is, the light entering Earth's atmosphere, especially at the horizon, have a well-known tendency to make Sirius appear to have different color qualities. Also, if Sirius B had recently become a white dwarf from a red giant in the last several thousand years, we would expect to find some evidence of a planetary nebula that is typical of that type of stellar evolution. Not having a satisfactory answer to this question, while frustrating, doesn't prove your conclusion of a young Earth, or universe, as we have visible stars and galaxies available for us to study whose light traveled millions and even billions of years to reach Earth.
Here we have the moon. The moon goes around the Earth. I think we can all agree about this. As the moon goes around the Earth, it is gradually getting farther away. We are slowly losing the moon. It's leaving us a couple of inches per year. Not a big deal. But if the moon is getting farther and farther away every day, that means that it used to be closer. Well, if we bring the moon in closer, we start to create a problem because the moon is what causes the tides. If the moon were closer, the tides would be higher. There's a law called the inverse square law. If you brought the moon to 1/3 the distance, you flip the 1/3 and square it, you get 9 times the gravitational pull. If you were to do all the math on this, you will find out that the moon and the Earth would have been almost together just over 1 billion years ago.
The moon, which is currently about 238,900 miles away from the Earth, is pushed out about 3.8 centimeters a year, or 1.5 inches. This happens as a result of our Earth's tidal interactions with the moon. As the Earth experiences what is referred to as a tidal bulge, caused primarily by the moon's gravity, angular momentum is transferred from the Earth to the moon. The Earth's rotation slows by a few milliseconds each century, and the moon is pushed out just a bit further. Assuming that this occurrence was happening at a consistent rate, because uniformitarianism, then we can see that the moon, 4.5 billion years ago, would be around 106,000 miles closer to the Earth, a distance of around 132,000 miles away, still well outside the Roche limit, which is the distance at which the gravitational force of Earth would annihilate the moon or have ever kept it from forming. One of the more probable scenarios of moon formation suggests a massive early Earth impact launching debris into space and coalescing well beyond the Roche limit to form the early moon. However, it does seem as though applying the inverse square would change things a bit, but if the moon was formed beyond the Roche limit, which is the most likely case, your inverse square conundrum only means that the earlier moon would have been more affected by Earth's gravity and possibly moving away at a slightly different speed, as the convergence of continents into a supercontinent state would have reduced the effects of the tidal bulge even as the gravitational interaction between the Earth and moon would have been somewhat increased. But however you do the math, it still doesn't add up to a 6,000-year-old moon. Or Earth.
The Earth is spinning over 1,000 miles per hour at the equator, and the Earth is slowing down. The Earth slows about 1,000th of a second every day. If the Earth is only 6,000 years old, like the Bible says, this is not a problem at all. It would have been going a little faster, and Adam and Eve probably wouldn't even have noticed. However, if the Earth were billions of years old, this would create a problem. The Earth would have been spinning super fast and the winds would have been unbearable from the Coriolis effect. Well, I guess that explains what happened to the dinosaurs. No, the dinosaurs did not live millions of years ago.
Currently, Earth's rotation is slowing at a rate of about 1.7 milliseconds a century due to the interaction with the moon I mentioned previously. However, we have evidence showing that for around the last 2,700 years, the average rotational slowdown equals about 2.3 milliseconds every 100 years. At this rate, 600 million years ago, our average day would be a little over 21 hours, which is fairly consistent with studies of tidal rhythmites. Rhythmites being sedimentary rock laid down in a periodic fashion, in this case caused by tidal conditions. Closer diurnal or semi-diurnal occurrences of the tides would indicate a shorter day, so no, I don't think that the dinosaurs would have been blown off the planet by some kind of runaway Coriolis effect. In fact, for the Earth to override the effects of gravity and catapult things into space, it would have to make a complete rotation about once every 84 minutes. So probably no astronaut dinosaurs. Sorry. Thanks everyone for watching. Thanks to all of you, I've gotten over 60 subs, and that is amazing. Next stop, 1 billion. But delusions of grandeur aside, I hope you enjoyed this. After the second part of this two-part insanity, I may do some more video responses to the content from Truth and Genesis. Leave a comment if that's something you'd like, or if you have other ideas. Also, make them likes happen. And as always, have a science-tastic day.